Donald Trump's success story is one that has been told countless times, yet it continues to fascinate millions around the world because it is filled with ambition, determination, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. And whether one admires him or criticizes him, it is impossible to deny that his journey from a young boy in Queens, New York, to a world-famous businessman, television icon, and ultimately the 45th President of the United States, is a narrative unlike any other, a tale that shows how belief in oneself, persistence in the face of challenges, and the courage to take bold risks can redefine destiny. And it all begins with a boy named Donald John Trump, born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, where he was the fourth of 5 children to Fred and Mary Trump. And while his father was already a successful real estate developer who had built a fortune in residential housing across New York, Donald's early life was not just about privilege but also about discipline, competition, and the constant push to achieve more than others, and his father instilled in him the belief that winners think big, act bold, and never settle for mediocrity, a mindset that would guide Trump throughout his life. But even as a boy, Donald was not the kind to blend into the background. He was energetic, competitive, sometimes even rebellious, which led his parents to enroll him in the New York Military Academy, a move that shaped his character with structure, leadership, and the ability to thrive under pressure. And while many saw the military environment as harsh, Donald thrived, excelling in sports, gaining respect among peers, and proving that he could stand out even in a place designed to discipline and humble strong personalities. And from those teenage years, a seed of ambition was already planted that he would one day rise beyond ordinary paths, never satisfied with just following what others considered enough. When Trump entered Fordham University and later transferred to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, he was already focused on one thing: making it big, bigger than even his father had. Because while Fred Trump had established himself as a wealthy and respected real estate developer, Donald's vision was never about staying in the shadows. He wanted skyscrapers, global deals, and his name to shine in golden letters across the world. And in Wharton he absorbed the technical skills of finance, economics, and real estate, but more importantly, he developed a vision for how to play the game on a bigger scale. And his classmates often recalled how Trump spoke with an unusual confidence, saying things that sounded outrageous to others, but to him, they were simply declarations of what would eventually happen, and that confidence, often mistaken for arrogance, became one of his defining traits because it allowed him to believe in his vision even when others doubted him. And by the time he graduated in 1968, he was ready to step into the family business, but not as an heir who would simply continue tradition, but as a visionary who would transform it. Trump joined his father's company, Elizabeth Trump & Son, which primarily built middle-class rental housing in Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. And while this business was already profitable and respected, Donald quickly realized that the future was in Manhattan, the glamorous heart of New York where skyscrapers touched the clouds and where the world paid attention. And though his father was cautious about moving into such high-stakes territory, Donald insisted, believing that prestige, luxury, and visibility were what created true legacy, and so he began studying the Manhattan market, attending meetings, and learning how to negotiate deals with the city, bankers, and contractors. And soon he set his sights on his first major breakthrough, transforming the decaying Commodore Hotel into the Grand Hyatt, a bold move that others thought was doomed. But Trump convinced the city of New York to give him a tax abatement deal, persuaded Hyatt to partner with him, and in 1980, the Grand Hyatt opened, shining as a symbol of what Donald Trump could do: turn something forgotten and neglected into something grand and iconic, and this success announced his arrival in Manhattan in spectacular fashion. From there, Trump's rise in the 1980s became meteoric as he launched project after project. Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue became his crown jewel, a luxury skyscraper of glass and ambition that not only redefined New York luxury but also symbolized his brand, with his name literally shining in bold gold letters, and celebrities, businessmen, and elites all wanted to live there, proving Trump's vision correct. And he expanded into casinos in Atlantic City, purchased hotels, launched airline ventures, and became a media sensation, often appearing in magazines and television interviews, because for Trump, success was not just about making deals but about creating a personal brand that screamed power, wealth, and influence. And while critics dismissed him as a showman, Trump knew that perception is power, and by building an image of larger-than-life success, he could attract even bigger deals. And in the 1980s, Trump became more than a surname, it became a brand synonymous with bold ambition and unapologetic wealth. Yet success stories are never without struggles, and in the 1990s, Trump faced some of the toughest battles of his life as his empire, heavily invested in casinos and luxury properties, found itself drowning in debt during the real estate downturn, and bankruptcy loomed over him multiple times, with critics saying it was the end of Trump's career. But here is where his resilience truly shined. Because rather than giving up, he negotiated with banks, restructured debt, and used his unmatched ability to market his name and vision to bounce back, proving that setbacks are only temporary if you refuse to quit. And he famously said, "Sometimes by losing a battle you find a new way to win the war." And indeed, Trump's comebacks became part of his legend, showing the world that he was not just a man who enjoyed success but a fighter who could endure failure and still rise again. By the 2000s, Trump reinvented himself yet again, this time not just as a businessman but as a television star, launching The Apprentice, a reality show where contestants competed for a chance to work with him, and the iconic phrase, "You're fired," became a part of American pop culture, making Trump a household name even among those who had no interest in real estate. And this show not only boosted his brand but also showed his ability to adapt to changing times, proving that his success was not confined to one industry but extended to entertainment and media as well, and his global recognition skyrocketed, with Trump-branded buildings appearing around the world, from Chicago to Dubai. But perhaps the most unexpected and historic chapter of Donald Trump's story began in 2015, when he announced his candidacy for President of the United States. And while many dismissed him as a joke, a publicity stunt, or an outsider with no chance, Trump defied all odds by speaking directly to millions of Americans who felt ignored by the political establishment, and with his bold style, unconventional approach, and fearless attitude, he dominated headlines, defeated seasoned politicians, and, in 2016, he achieved what many thought impossible. Donald Trump's story cannot be told without digging deeper into the mindset that carried him through each phase of his life. Because while many people inherit wealth or enter business, very few manage to take what they have and multiply it into a global brand recognized everywhere. And this was where Trump separated himself from the ordinary. Because from the earliest days, he understood that image, confidence, and boldness mattered just as much as numbers on paper, and he used this principle relentlessly, shaping himself into not just a businessman but a symbol of ambition, luxury, and success. So when he first began putting his name in giant gold letters on skyscrapers, hotels, and casinos, critics mocked him as a show-off. But soon those same critics had to acknowledge that the name Trump alone became a magnet for attention, investors, and customers. And Trump proved that sometimes the perception of success is the first step toward creating actual success. Because people are drawn to power, prestige, and confidence. And Trump delivered all of that in abundance. Yet the path was never smooth, for the same ambition that lifted him up also brought him into situations of extreme pressure, especially during the real estate downturns of the late 1980s and early 1990s, when his empire was billions in debt. Headlines declared him finished, and rivals prepared to write his obituary in the business world. But instead of retreating quietly, Trump doubled down on negotiations, used his charm and persistence to convince bankers to keep faith in him, and slowly rebuilt, teaching the world that resilience is not about avoiding storms but about sailing through them, no matter how fierce, and that lesson became a foundation of his brand. Trump was a fighter who never gave up. It was this fighter spirit that also propelled him into politics later in life. But even before that, the comeback he engineered in the 1990s and early 2000s was extraordinary, because while many would have disappeared after such massive financial setbacks, Trump re-emerged with not only his properties restored but his personal brand stronger than ever, thanks to his knack for publicity, his ability to market himself as a symbol of winning, and his entrance into television with The Apprentice, which captivated audiences by portraying him as the ultimate boss, decisive, powerful, and commanding respect with his famous phrase, "You're fired." And this exposure turned him into a cultural icon, admired by those who dreamed of success and wealth, and criticized by those who felt he was too brash. But regardless of opinion, everyone knew the name Donald Trump, and that recognition was priceless. Because in the world of influence, being unforgettable is a form of power. As he expanded globally, with Trump-branded towers rising in Chicago, Las Vegas, Toronto, Istanbul, and other cities, his empire became not only about real estate but about licensing, turning his name into a luxury brand itself. So while some projects were owned directly, others simply bore the Trump name, allowing him to extend his reach with less risk, and this strategy showed his adaptability. Because Trump understood that the game of success was not about doing everything yourself but about leveraging partnerships, reputation, and brand value. And in this, he excelled, teaching aspiring entrepreneurs that sometimes the most powerful asset you can create is not a building or a product but a brand that people trust, admire, or desire, and Trump turned his brand into one of the most recognizable in the world. When he entered the political arena, many thought it was a joke, but those who had followed his career closely knew that Trump had always flirted with politics, often commenting on America's challenges, trade imbalances, and the struggles of working people. And while he had never held office before, he carried into politics the same traits that had defined his business career: boldness, directness, and the willingness to say what others feared. And this approach resonated with millions, because, while the political establishment followed scripts and avoided controversy, Trump spoke in a way that felt raw, real, and unfiltered, and whether one agreed or disagreed, his words cut through the noise and captured attention, a skill he had mastered long ago in business and media, and it was this ability to connect directly with people that powered his campaign from underdog status to a movement that shook the world. In 2016, when he won the presidency against all odds, defeating seasoned politicians and shocking experts, it was not just a personal victory but a continuation of his life story. The outsider who had been doubted, ridiculed, and written off, rising to the very top because he refused to accept limits, and while his presidency was filled with controversy, achievements, and heated debate. From tax reforms to economic growth before the pandemic to foreign policy moves that changed international dynamics, the larger lesson of his journey remained clear. Success belongs to those who take bold steps, ignore the noise of critics, and refuse to surrender when the world pushes back, and Trump embodied this lesson repeatedly. What makes his story especially inspiring is not whether one agrees with his politics but the undeniable fact that he dared to step into arenas where others told him he did not belong. First, Manhattan real estate, where many said he would fail, yet he built Trump Tower and reshaped the skyline. Then casinos, where he faced collapse but found ways to rebound. Then television, where he reinvented himself into a household name. And finally politics, where against all conventional wisdom, he became the President of the United States, and in each case, he turned doubt into fuel, rejection into motivation, and setbacks into comebacks, and that is the heart of his success story. The relentless pursuit of victory, regardless of obstacles. Trump's rise also reflects the deeper American dream, the idea that anyone, no matter how many people tell you it cannot be done, can rise to the top if they believe strongly enough, fight hard enough, and seize opportunities with courage, and in that sense, his life is a testament to possibility, reminding people across the world that you do not need to follow the standard path to achieve greatness, you can carve your own, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And while some see Trump as polarizing, others see him as a symbol of bold individuality, proving that success is not about pleasing everyone but about staying true to your vision and moving forward without apology. And for millions who dream of breaking barriers in their own lives, his story is a reminder that limits are illusions. As his post-presidency chapter continues, Donald Trump remains a figure of immense influence, still commanding attention, still shaping conversations, and still demonstrating the lesson that he has carried since his youth at the New York Military Academy. That leaders are not made in comfort, they are made in conflict, in the willingness to take risks, and in the courage to stand alone if necessary. And whether one loves him or despises him, the truth is that his story continues to inspire, provoke, and challenge people to think bigger, act bolder, and believe more deeply in themselves, because if a boy from Queens could one day see his name on skyscrapers, casinos, global projects, television screens, and ultimately the White House, then truly, there is no dream too impossible for those who dare.